There's a moment right before sleep when the mind starts reviewing things you didn't even realize you were keeping track of. A sentence you said earlier, a look someone gave you, the way you responded or didn't. It's not anxiety, exactly. It's just the mind doing what it does when no one's watching. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And if you ever feel like sharing your experience, the comments are open. It happens in the spaces between action, in the pause before a reply, in the second before a door opens. The mind talks to itself constantly, rehearsing, reviewing, repeating, not because something is wrong, but because that's how we make sense of being here. This is about those conversations, the ones you never speak aloud. Tópico 1. A conversa silenciosa que começa antes mesmo de abrir os olhos. Fecha. Doesn't always feel like a touch. It feels more like a continuation, as if the mind never fully stopped, even while you slept. There's a sentence already forming, something about what needs to happen or what didn't happen yesterday. You haven't moved yet, but the dialogue has already begun. It's not planning, exactly. It's more like orientation, the mind checking in with itself, scanning for what's unfinished, what's waiting, what needs attention. A quiet inventory taken in the dark, before the eyes open, before the body moves. The voice inside is already present. Some mornings it's gentle, other mornings it's louder, but it's always there. This internal narrator setting the tone before the day has even started. It doesn't need you beijar, and somehow, without deciding to, you listen. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21-20 do ETPISEU 2, as frases internas usadas para se preparar para pequenas interações. There's a specific kind of rehearsal that happens right before you speak to someone. Even if it's just the barista or a coworker in the hallway or the person answering the phone, the mind prepares a small script, not because the interaction is difficult, but because it wants the exchange to go smoothly, predictably, without friction. You don't consciously decide to do this. It just happens. A quiet preview of what you'll say, how you'll say it, what tone to use. Sometimes you use a word, or more polite, or less needy. The goal isn't perfection. It's just readiness. A small buffer between your inner world and the outer one, and then the moment arrives. Sometimes you use the exact phrase you rehearsed. Sometimes you don't, but the preparation wasn't wasted. It steadied something inside. It gave you a version of yourself to step into, even if only for a few seconds. The interaction ends. The script dissolves. Unsigned somewhere the midground writing. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21-20 ATPI seu 3. O jeito como a mente repete explicações que nunca foram pedidas. Sometimes, in the middle of doing nothing in particular, the mind begins explaining something, not to anyone specific, just explaining why you made a certain choice, why you didn't respond to a message right away. Wayuli Orstayilat said. The explanation is detailed, reasonable, almost rehearsed, but no one asked for it. There's no conversation happening, no accusation to defend against. Yet, the mind builds the case anyway, as if preparing for a trial that may never come. It organizes the reasons, arranges them carefully, makes sure they sound fair and logical. It's not paranoia, it's something quieter, a need to justify, even in silence, to make sure that if the question ever does come, you'll already have the answer, that you've thought it through, that you're not careless or thoughtless or wrong. And when the explanation finishes, it simply fades, filed away somewhere, waiting. Juste in case. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21 vant cato TPI seu 4, as respostas ensaiadas para diálogos que talvez nunca aconteçam. There are entire conversations that play out only in your head. Someone says something they haven't actually said yet, maybe never will, and you respond calmly, clearly, with exactly the right words. You say what you wish you'd said before, or what you'd say if given the chance. The dialogue unfolds smoothly, without interruption, without misunderstanding. It feels productive in a strange way, like you're preparing for a moment that matters, sharpening your responses, finding the right balance between honesty and diplomacy. You imagine their reaction, adjust your tone, try again. The mental stage is set, the lines rehearsed, the outcome controlled. But the conversation, the real one, may never happen. Or if it does, it rarely follows script. People don't respond the way you imagined. The moment doesn't unfold the way you planned. And still, the mind keeps rehearsing, building scenarios, crafting replies, anticipating outcomes, not because it's useful, but because it's trying to prepare you for a world that refuses to be predictable. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21 vance TPI seu 5, o hábito de narrar os próprios erros em voz baixa por dentro. When something goes wrong, even something small, there's a voice that immediately takes inventory. It replays the moment. It highlights exactly where you stumbled, what you should have noticed, what you could have done differently. The narration is precise, almost clinical, not cruel, exactly, just, accurate. It doesn't matter if anyone else noticed the mistake. The internal narrator caught it, and it wants you to know. So it repeats this lie down point step. Sometimes it adds context, what you were thinking, what distracted you, why it happened, as if understanding the error will prevent it from happening again. But the narration doesn't stop there. It lingers. It circles back hours later, sometimes days. A quiet loop playing in the background while you do other things, reminding you, keeping score, making sure you don't forget. Eventually, it fades. The voice moves on to something else, but the pattern remains. Every error catalogued, every mistake quietly filed away, in a place only you can access. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21 vance TPI seu 6, as palavras mentais escolhidas para atravessar momentos desconfortáveis derare torrentings unstable. When you're sitting in a waiting room, or walking into a crowded space, or enduring a silence that stretches too long, the words aren't spoken aloud. They're just there, repeating softly, like a quiet mantra you never consciously chose. It's fine, just a few more minutes. You've done this before. The phrases are simple, almost bland, but they serve a purpose. They create a rhythm, a small anchor in the middle of discomfort. The mind needs something to hold on to, and so it offers itself these words, ove en dove, until the moment passes. Sometimes the words are instructions. Breathe, stay calm, don't react. Sometimes they're reassurances. It doesn't matter. No one's watching. They don't solve anything. They don't change the situation, but they create a kind of distance, a buffer between what's happening and how you feel about it. And when the discomfort finally ends, the words dissolve. Si la gain, waiting for the next time they're needed. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo. Tópicos 21 vance TPI seu 7. A repetição de pensamentos como forma de manter controle emocional as a single ties and refuses to live. Not because it's important necessarily, but because letting it go feels like losing grip on something, so the mind holds it. tournit over angles, returns to it throughout the day as if checking that it's still there. It's not obsession, it's more like maintenance, a way of keeping the internal world organized. When the external one feels unpredictable, the thought becomes a fixed point, something known, something you can return to when everything else is shifting. The repetition doesn't solve anything, but it creates a sense of order. The mind cycles through the same considerations, the same questions, the some half-formed conclusions. Each time it feels slightly different, slightly clearer, or maybe just familiar, and that familiarity, strange as it sounds, becomes comforting. Eventually, when the emotional ground feels steady again, the thought releases. It loses its weight, and the mind quietly moves on to something else. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21, 27 TPIC 8, o diálogo interno que surge ao comparar o agora com o que poderia ter sido there are moments when into two timelines. One is here, the present, what actually happened. The other is somewhere else, a version of events that almost occurred. And for a few seconds or minutes, the mind holds both, comparing them, measuring the distance between what is and what might have been. It's not regret, exactly. It's more like observation, a quiet assessment of the choices made, the paths not taken. The mind wonders, without emotion, how different things would be if you'd said yes instead of no, if you'd stayed instead of left, if you'd chosen differently in that one small moment. The comparison isn't painful, it's just present, like looking at a photograph of a place you almost visited. There's curiosity there, maybe a touch of something unnameable, but mostly it's just the mind doing what it does, tracing the outline of alternate possibilities, holding them up to the light, and then, without ceremony, the other timeline fades. What remains is only this one, the one you're living. Deu anel. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21, 27 TPIC 9. As frases íntimas usadas para se acalmar sem que ninguém perceba. There are words you say to yourself that no one else will ever hear. Not because they're secret, but because they're too small, too personal, too specific to the moment. They arrive when you're standing in line, or sitting in traffic, or lying awake at 3 in the morning. Simple phrases that belong only to you. Itegate sokai. You're okay. This will pass. They're not affirmations in the motivational sense. They're quieter than that, more honest. They acknowledge what you're feeling without trying to fix it. They don't promise that everything will be fine. They just offer a small steadiness in the middle of whatever's happening. Sometimes they're directed inward, like talking to a younger version of yourself. Sometimes they're just thoughts shaped like sentences, repeated until the feeling shifts. No one teaches you these phrases. You find them on your own, through trial and error, through the slow process of learning what soothes your particular kind of unease. And they work in their quiet way, not dramatically, not permanently, but enough to get you through the next minute and then the next. Gostou ou deseja ajustar algo? Continuar para o próximo tópicos 21, 27 TPIC 10, o tom da própria voz interna ao encerrar o dia em silêncio. At the end of the day, when the lights are off and the noise has stopped, there's a final conversation, not with anyone else, just with yourself. The voice that's been narrating all day shifts its tone. Sometimes it's gentler, sometimes it's tired, sometimes it's still reviewing, still processing what happened. It's the last internal monologue before sleep, a quiet accounting of the day, not a formal review, just thoughts settling, things you noticed, things you wished you'd done differently, small moments that stood out for reasons you can't quite explain. The voice moves through them slowly, without urgency. There's a particular quality to this voice that doesn't exist at any other time. It's more honest, maybe less defended. It speaks in the language of almost sleep, where thoughts blur and meanings shift. It doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. It's just there, accompanying you into the quiet. And then, at some point, the voice fades. The sentences become fragments. The fragments become nothing. The mind finally rests. Until tamarem tópicos concluídos. Agora vamos para a conclusão. Gostaria que eu prossiga? Concluso 21. To aid conclusbo, these conversations happen in the spaces no one else can see, in the seconds between moments, in the quiet that exists only inside. They're not symptoms of something wrong. They're not signs of weakness or overthinking. They're just part of being human, part of having a mind that processes, that prépare, that tries to make sense of everything it encounters. You're not alone in this. The voice inside your head, the one that rehearses and reviews and repeats, it's doing what minds do. It's trying to help you navigate a world that's unpredictable, uncertain, and constantly changing. Sometimes it's louder than it needs to be. Sometimes it gets stuck, but it's yours, and it's been with you all along. There's something quietly powerful in recognizing these patterns. Not to fix them, but to see them clearly, to understand that the internal dialogue you carry isn't strange or excessive. It's ordinary, it's shared. It's part of the invisible architecture of being alive. If this resonated with you, if you found yourself in any of these moments, consider subscribing. There's more to explore about the quiet psychology of everyday life. And sometimes it helps to know that what you feel in silence, others feel too.